A famous actress must find a way to escape after a disdainful painter kidnaps and imprisons her. While taking his students for a walk in the woods, Professor Bernard spots an unclothed woman sunbathing by the lake. As the children continue along the trail, the man stays behind for a few minutes and creepily takes several photographs with his camera. Meanwhile, Jeanne, a woman with a disfigured face, stares back at a little girl who keeps staring at her. In the end, the girl's mother tells her to sit back down and stop staring disrespectfully at the lady. Later, as Jeanne walks through the woods, she hides behind a tree and watches as the woman at the lake, Isabelle, puts her clothes back on. That evening, Pierre, the bar owner, welcomes Isabelle into his establishment and tells her that he can't believe he is talking to the famous Dutch actress. Suddenly, Jeanne, who works there as a waitress, serves the woman her drink, and her sour expression shows her resentment at the attention the actress is receiving. Weeks earlier, Isabelle attended the premiere of her latest film with her boyfriend, director Roger. A reporter asks her what she plans to do next, and she replies that they are going to shoot another movie in July, but that she would like to go on vacation first. The next day, the actress goes for her daily swim in the lake. Her parents ask her to have lunch first, but she says she's skipping meals because she has to lose weight for her next movie. Her mother asks if she has her phone with her, and the woman says it's in her room because it's charging. While sunbathing, Isabelle hears the sound of leaves rustling, so she puts on her bikini top and calls out, but no one responds. While she's swimming, Jeanne and her dog George suddenly emerge from the trees. She gives the woman a friendly wave, but instead of waving back, the waitress unleashes the dog, and it swims toward the terrified actress. Just before George reaches Isabelle, Jeanne says she will call the dog back only if she does what she tells her. After the woman fearfully agrees to her terms, the waitress calls the animal back. When George returns to the shore, Jeanne puts the leash on him. Not understanding what's going on, Isabelle quickly puts on her dress and awkwardly says goodbye. However, as she starts to run, the waitress orders the dog to chase her. The woman reiterates that the actress has to do what she tells her, or she'll let the dog loose again. Then, the waitress hands Isabelle her designer shoes and introduces herself. Finally, Jeanne leads the woman back to her house. The confused actress asks why she's there, and the waitress shows her the painting studio. Isabelle wonders why there are no paintings hanging on the walls, and Jeanne tells her that they are in another room. However, the woman still doesn't understand why she's in the house, so the waitress tells her that she wants to create a series of paintings of her. Isabelle laughs and says she could have simply asked, but Jeanne knows that if she had, she would have never agreed. The actress wonders why she assumed she would say no right away, and the waitress tells her it's because the series will take months to complete. Puzzled, Isabelle says she can't commit to a months-long project because she has to film her next movie in July. Finally, the waitress pushes the woman down a flight of stairs, and when she regains consciousness, she realizes she's being held prisoner in the basement. While the actress pounds on the door and calls for help, Jeanne turns up loud music in her room to drown out the noise. 2 days later, Bernard greets a student's mother, Ghislaine. In the bar, the teacher and other patrons watch a news report detailing the actress's disappearance on TV. 2 weeks later, the authorities are slowly losing hope of finding the missing woman. A month after the disappearance, Isabelle's mother appears on the news, pleading for any information that could help the case. Finally, Roger tells reporters they had no choice but to recast the role in the movie because they had to start filming in July. Meanwhile, Jeanne goes on with her daily life as if nothing had happened, hoping to avoid drawing attention. Then, Pierre coldly says that he wishes it had been the unattractive waitress who disappeared instead of Isabelle. Later, the woman returns home and heads to the basement. She points out the stench in the room and says that someone as beautiful as Isabelle should never smell as bad as she does. The weak prisoner begs for food, but her captor orders her to go to the studio. While the starving actress poses on a bench, the artist paints her portrait on a canvas. Suddenly, Isabelle touches her stomach and says she doesn't feel well because she hasn't eaten in a long time. However, the ruthless captor approaches her and tells her to hold the pose. Isabelle then asks what Jeanne plans to do when the authorities catch her, but she doesn't respond. Later, the waitress enjoys her meal while the actress is tied to a chair with tape over her mouth. She explains that the police would never suspect her because people usually want to forget her seconds after seeing her face. Jeanne taunts Isabelle with the leftovers from her meal, but instead of giving them to the starving woman, she feeds them to George. Meanwhile, Bernard returns home from the bar and seems worried about the actress's disappearance. In the basement, the prisoner cries on the bed and imagines her mother gently touching her hair and telling her to try to understand how miserable her captor's life must be as an unattractive woman. During the next painting session, Isabelle asks if she can finally see the portrait, and the artist agrees. She then praises her skill, but the painter recognizes the tactic and knows she's trying to build a connection with her captor, hoping to win her sympathy. After Jeanne leaves the room, the actress gets dressed and tries to escape quietly. However, George intercepts her, and the waitress catches her. Moments later, the artist allows the prisoner to enter the room where she keeps the finished paintings. Isabelle sees paintings of animals in various stages of decomposition. Finally, she realizes that her captor wants to paint a series of portraits showing how her body deteriorates, which causes her to faint and collapse to the floor. Meanwhile, Bernard spends his evening cutting out news articles about the case. The next day, the man imagines the actress swimming in the lake before wading into the water, searching for her body. At the same time, the weak prisoner falls off the bench and says she's starving. Since she's not cooperating, Jeanne drags her back to the basement. Suddenly, she hears Bernard knocking on the door, asking to refill his canteen. The man says he didn't know she still lived in the house after her father's death, especially since they don't speak at the bar. From the basement, the actress screams for help, but he doesn't hear her. Later, Isabelle imagines her parents talking outside the room, so she checks the door but discovers it's still locked. The next day, Jeanne brings the prisoner to the dining table and feeds her a small piece of food at a time. During the next painting session, the actress asks the waitress why she's fascinated with death and decay when it comes to her art. The artist then says she paints the way she does because beauty is deceptive, and that nature creates beauty only to destroy it. She adds that beauty makes her feel ugly because she doesn't meet its standards. Isabelle responds by saying that she has expressive eyes and maybe she should try dressing in more feminine clothes. The waitress claims she has tried that before and says she would have preferred to be disabled, because at least then people would pity her. The actress asks if she has ever shown her art to people, but the painter says there's no point in trying, as she has experienced enough heartbreak in her life. Finally, Jeanne reveals her plan to send her paintings to someone once they're finished. Isabelle wonders if she's worried the authorities might track her down, but the waitress says that by then they will both be dead. The woman shares that she plans to burn down the house because her life isn't worth living. Then, Jeanne shows the actress the latest portrait and envisions how her art will cause a sensation. The next day, Isabelle tells her captor that being beautiful also has its downsides, like when her best friend's boyfriend fell in love with her after their first meeting. She knew his feelings weren't genuine because he fell for her looks, but it still caused irreparable damage to the friendship. She shares that her drama school professor openly flirted with her during her evaluation, even though all she wanted was a professional relationship. The woman adds that she has always had to be careful with men because, even when she thinks they're looking beyond her physical appearance, she realizes they only want her for her beauty. When she asks Jeanne about her own experiences with men, the painter is offended because it seems like she's so repulsive that no man would ever approach her. That night, the waitress plays loud music in her room and dances on the bed. Since Isabelle left the faucet running, the painter finds her in a puddle in the basement. The furious woman says that she will never leave the house alive because she's going to rot in the basement. Before leaving, Jeanne tearfully tells the actress how much she hates her. Moments later, the prisoner imagines Rogier apologizing to her for reassigning her role because they can't stop the production of a $7 million movie. Meanwhile, Bernard looks at the shrine he built for the actress and vows to find her. Later, Ghislaine arrives with a cake for the teacher. However, when she asks if they can enjoy the cake with some coffee, the man politely thanks her and goes back inside, worried she might see the shrine. At the same time, Isabelle tells Jeanne that she shouldn't idealize beauty. She shares that no one listens to her opinions on set because, if she expresses them, they always see her as arrogant. She adds that it's the same with her romantic relationships. They all start off wonderfully, but eventually, she realizes that all the men wanted was her body. However, Isabelle says she won't let that happen to her anymore, which leads the painter to ask what she means. The actress says she's been alone for years and prefers to stay that way. Then, she tells the waitress that their lives aren't so different. Moments later, Jeanne says they should spend the rest of the afternoon outside. By the pond, Isabelle confesses that she's been married twice before. The first was to an athlete who only talked about sports and wouldn't let her act. The second marriage was to an intellectual who tormented and abused her. Then, the waitress shares that her mother died when she was a child, and her father was always busy. The man couldn't cope with his wife's death, so he hanged himself in the basement a few months later. As she was an orphan, she was sent to a boarding school, where all the other children teased her about her appearance. Moments later, Isabelle shares that she lost her father in a car accident. However, her captor remembers seeing her parents on the news, so the actress clarifies that the man is her mother's latest husband. She goes on to say that her mother married a man from Nice a few years after her father's death. However, her stepfather abused her until she was finally able to run away from home as a teenager. After tearfully recounting the painful moments of her life, the woman tells Jeanne that she is the only person she's ever told. The captor goes back inside to get food and drinks for them to enjoy. Before leaving, she throws her cigarette in the trash can. Later, Isabelle says she has decided never to let a man touch her again unless she's sure he loves her for who she is. Jeanne tells her she's lucky to have the choice because no one wants to touch her. Then, the actress gently touches the woman's arm and face. Suddenly, the waitress hears the dog barking and realizes that the animal is trapped inside the burning kitchen. At first, Isabelle considers running away while her captor is distracted, but when Jeanne begs for help, she puts out the fire, saving the dog's life. Minutes later, the distressed woman hugs George and thanks the actress. Then, they head to the bathroom, where Isabelle bathes the waitress. Jeanne says she can't imagine her life without George, so Isabelle tells her that the dog, the house, and her paintings mean she still has something to live for. The painter wonders if the woman hates her, but the actress says no, because both of them suffer from people not seeing them for who they really are. After the women embrace, Jeanne says it might be time for Isabelle to have a proper bath. In the basement, the captor leaves some food for the prisoner and says she'll prepare her father's room so Isabelle can move into it tomorrow. Moments later, the actress realizes the door is unlocked, but when she climbs the stairs, she sees the chain on the gate. Then, the woman imagines talking to her parents and acknowledges that she missed several chances to escape earlier, like during the fire and how she could have drowned her captor in the bathtub. At the bar, Bernard asks Jeanne if she ever thinks about the missing actress. The woman says she probably just ran away, but the teacher responds that she had no reason to do so. He then tells the customers how Isabelle was abused by her stepfather in Nice and about her 2 failed marriages with an athlete and an intellectual. Ghislaine says the story sounds familiar, but she's not sure where she's heard it before. Then, Bernard asserts that the actress doesn't have a stepfather because her parents are still together. He adds that she has never been married, but she has a boyfriend who is a film director. Jeanne asks the man where he got this information, and he says he's studying the case closely. Suddenly, Ghislaine remembers that the story about the stepfather from Nice and the failed marriages with the athlete and the intellectual was from Marilyn Monroe's biography. Furious and devastated that Isabelle lied to her, the waitress squeezes a glass so hard that it breaks and cuts her hand. As the woman leaves the bar, Bernard watches her and wonders what could have caused such a reaction. Later, the captor tears apart the basement with a crowbar and threatens to hit the prisoner. She then runs outside and cries in the torrential rain. The next day, the teacher heads to the waitress's house. Meanwhile, Jeanne checks the basement and, to her horror, discovers that the actress has hanged herself with the sheet. Later, the man sees Isabelle's shoes by the pond and picks them up. He then sneaks into the house and goes down to the basement. At first, he thinks he has arrived too late to save the actress, but the woman suddenly points to a chair, revealing that she is still alive. After Bernard places the chair beneath her feet, she opens her robes and shows him that she has created a harness around her body using the sheet, an old movie trick that gives the illusion that someone is hanging. Meanwhile, the painter tells George that she needs to leave. She then goes to the room with her paintings and sprays her body with gasoline. As the couple sneaks away, Isabelle stays behind and tries to stop her captor from setting herself on fire. She tells Jeanne that it was a trick and that she's still alive. However, the waitress calls her deceitful and strangles her before lighting another match. The actress sits up and watches as the woman becomes engulfed in flames. As the couple makes their way through the forest, the exhausted woman lies on the ground for a few minutes. While she is unconscious, Bernard unties her dress and touches her in a disturbing way. When she wakes up, Isabelle puts on her shoes and says she's ready to continue the journey. After the harrowing experience, the actress regained all the weight she had lost in a matter of weeks. Isabelle also sought psychiatric help, decided she no longer wanted to act, and preferred to write a book.